I promised a short sermon to some people, so I have to start quick so I can finish fast. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Sir Walter Scott in Marmion, published February 22nd, 1808. He finished it January 22nd, 1808, and he started working on it in 1806. It took him 2 years to write his epic poem, Marmion. But the phrase in there that has lived for me is, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Imagine a courtroom setting with me for a moment. And in this courtroom, every time you tell a lie, you turn orange. Every time you tell a lie, you turn orange in this room. Imagine how the lawyer's job would change. What the judge would be able to know and not know. How the court system would change if every time you told a lie, your skin color changed. What if instead of a courtroom, it was your living room? And every time you told a lie, your skin color changed. And you went orange. I picked orange because it was Pojo color. I don't know other than that. You think about that. What would our life be like if every time we deceived someone and every time that we told a fib or an exaggeration or a lie, because all fibs and exaggerations are lies, what would we do if people could instantly see that on our face? The Pinocchio comes out in us, and we can tell it. And what I'm really trying to do this morning is let you experience some liberty that can come to your life. And it is the genuine liberty of living without lying. I'm passionate about spiritual disciplines, and this is one of those spiritual disciplines that needs to come early in our life. The submission to the will of the Spirit to the degree that we no longer lie. That our yes is yes and you can trust us. Look at this passage here in James chapter 1, and I'll read the passage to you. It's not all going to come up. In verse 17, it says this, every good thing given and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. With God, there is no variation or shifting shadow. I like the way Doug prayed about that God doesn't change like we do. With Him, there is no variation or shifting shadow. It's constant. It's truth. It's always the same. I never have to doubt it. What would you do with a God that you couldn't trust? What would you do with a God that might lie to you? What would you do with a God that was variable, angry one day? That's one of the big problems with all of the gods of the pantheon. They vary. You don't know if God's going to show up angry or not. You don't know how you're going to appease that God. You're not going to know what makes that God happy. And with the only God, there is no variation or shifting shadow at all. And that's why living without lying becomes that initial Christian trait that we have to have, because John 8:44 is true as well. And Jesus is talking to the folks in Jerusalem, and He says, you are of your father the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. With God, there is no variation or shifting shadow. As a matter of fact, Paul tells us in Timothy that it's even impossible for God to lie. But with Satan, we find out that there is no truth in him. There's no truth in him at all. Have you ever run across one of those people where they would rather lie than tell you the truth? It was just their sort of nature. I ran into a fella at church not long ago. It wasn't this church. But he simply told me that someone asked him about working and fulfilling a contract, and he said, sure, no problem, I can handle that. Knowing full well when he said it that he could not meet the obligation he just committed to. Knowing 2 weeks later he was going to have to look that brother in the eye and say, I'm sorry, I know I told you I would do that and could do that, and I can't fulfill it. And he came to me asking, why would I say something like that? When I said it, I knew there was no way I could contractually fulfill it due to time constraints. And I told him I would do it. And I waited 2 weeks. He said, I didn't sleep for 2 weeks. My guts were just churning. I couldn't sleep at night because I lied to this brother. And I knew my day was coming when I was going to be found. And I was going to have to tell him, I can't do that. I knew that when I said it. Why would I do that? Lying is about Satan getting into us and wanting us to please people and wanting us to not have fear and wanting us to not have issues and consequences. Or maybe manipulate things so things are comfortable for us or we can have what we want. And it wasn't a big deal. It was just a lie. And you know what Satan loves to do with that lie is he just starts to tear at the chink of your armor. He wants to mess with your integrity. And he wants to say, you are not of your Father in whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. You are of me. I am your Father. And there's no truth in me. So even when you don't know why you lied because you're mine. I got you. The spiritual discipline of living without lying is coming to God as our Father. And it is accepting that we belong to Him and His nature, not Satan and his nature. That's why lying comes up in such critical places in Scripture. So this morning we're going to quickly shed the light on lying. And look at this first passage as it comes up. He says, when we come to this direction of Matthew 5:33 to 37, this is a little section in the Sermon on the Mount, and from here on, all the text will come up on the screen. This is that little section in the Sermon on the Mount about letting your yes be yes and your no, no. And what he's really dealing with is the potential that you might not tell the truth. Why do we have to take an oath when we go to court? Well, it's the potential that we might not tell the truth. Perjury gets to be so bad because it has the consequences of lying under oath. We have to bear those consequences. But all lying has consequences for us. Any little lie has the consequence of destroying us. So we make an oath, or we swear, or we make a promise. I promise I'm telling the truth. Anytime that starts to happen, it's sort of a strange thing. Even Paul does it a time or two when he's talking in their vernacular. But in our world, I promise I'm telling the truth. The minute I say, I promise, what did I tell you? Oh, you better wonder about what I'm fixing to say. Right? I watched a Monk episode the other night, just old reruns. And his half-brother was there. And his half-brother, every time he raised his hand, he said, my hand to God. And finally Monk says, that's my code word for knowing that you're lying, not for knowing that you're telling the truth. And that's really what's going on in this passage. Oh, we made it to 73, so I'm going to get some air going. Not too much, just 71, 2 degrees. I see enough fans going on. Look at the text. Again, you have heard that the ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, make no oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is the footstool of His feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you make an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond these is of evil. We live in a world that's hungry for being able to trust what is said. When's the last time you watched the news and said, I believe they told me the truth? Or maybe, I believe they told me the truth as they know the news. Or, I've listened to every voice and I can't tell who's telling the truth. And that's the world that Satan has us living in. And it is literally under the prince of the power of the air. And Jesus says, don't get caught up in that. You let your yes be yes and your no, no. Mainly I want to do that for you because it is the spiritual discipline of liberty. Your Father's great character is truth. In him there is no variation or shifting shadow. And as you come to live in your Father, you have the simplicity of telling people the truth. And that's a wonderful freedom. It's a great freedom for us to have. That we don't get caught up in, well, I'll lie today or not lie, or it wasn't as bad as what they said, or I only lied to protect myself. No. Joseph's accused of rape. Doesn't rape anyone, but he's accused of it. He doesn't even lie to protect himself, goes to prison, waits for God to take care of him, provides for him, pulls him out of that prison. Oh, we need to understand. We need to let our yes be yes and our no, no. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 24 and 25. The very first implication of showing us from one passage to another, where he says, here's how you can show that you're letting God control your life. The first verse, put on the new self, which in the right likeness of God has been created in righteousness and holiness of the truth. All right, we're going to put on the new self. I want you to look at the first thing he addresses. Verse 25, therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth one to another, because we are members of one another. The very first illustration he has of putting on the new self is stop lying. Because he knows Satan's nature is for us to lie, and Satan's nature is to lie. And the very first thing he has when he says put on the new self is stop lying. Kids have trouble with their parents, maybe because the parents can't trust what they say. If you want to have great liberty with your extended family and your parents, just tell the truth. Yeah, I'll be in by 10. Well, no, I knew when I left the ball game wouldn't be over till 11, but I knew you wanted me home by 10, so I told you I'd be in by 10. But I'm going to call you at 9:45 and tell you the ball game isn't going to be over for another hour and a half. Is it okay if I come in at midnight? Well, no, wait a minute. That's not going to work very well. Dad may give in to that once, but pretty soon he's going to come and say, wait a minute, you knew what time the ball game likely would be over. Just speak the truth to me. Speak the truth. I was 16 years old. The day I got my driver's license, Quitman was playing hooks in a football game in Mount Pleasant. It was about 95 miles away. The day I got my driver's license, and I told my mom, Jeff and I would like to go to the game. When will you be home? At 2 a.m. She said, okay. I got in my truck, took my friend, and drove at 16, 95 miles away, went to a football game, and got back by 2 a.m. But if I'd have told her, oh, I don't know, she would have never let me go. And she let me go because there was a trust factor that as long as I didn't violate it, I had great liberty. Rarely had a curfew, because if Mom said, what time's the movie over? I said, 7:30, I'll be home by 8. I was home by 8. I wasn't trying to stay out till midnight. Where are you going? What are you doing? Tell the truth. God looks at our life and says, I want you to tell me the truth. I lied to her. I destroyed her life by what I told her. Oh no, just speak the truth. God says, let's speak the truth. You can have great freedom in your own personal life if you'll just tell the truth. Satan loves for you to just be deceptive and lying. Of the 7 deadly sins, in Proverbs chapter 6, of the 7 deadly sins, lying is the only one that's mentioned twice. I figured if it's a deadly sin, once is enough. But he says, no, in the 7 deadly sins, I'm going to put lying in there 2 times. He says, there are 6 things which the Lord hates, yes, 7 which are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who utters lies, and one who spreads strife among brothers. Lies gets in the list twice. The lying tongue is just any deception, any lying that is there. The second one has to do with a witness or a testimony that is false. We're back to our courtroom setting. What would court look like if, when you got on the stand, not only did you promise to tell the truth, but everyone would know if you lied? The judge knows it. Would you like to rephrase your answer? I'm going to sit here until you turn back to your normal color, whatever it is. You're just as orange as you can be. Oh, God knows when we're lying. God knows the color of our soul and our spirit that is there. And think about how He wants to free us. He says, I hate a lying tongue and I hate a false witness that utters lies. Last verse, Isaiah 59, 1 through 4. I started not to put 1 and 2 in, but we quote these a lot. Behold, the Lord's hand is not so short that it cannot save, neither is his ear so dull that he cannot save. But your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you so that he does not hear. God, why aren't you listening to me? Notice the first thing he lists in my sin column. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken falsehood. Your tongue mutters wickedness. No one sues righteously, and no one pleads honestly. They trust in confusion and speak lies. They conceive mischief and bring forth iniquity. If that's not a commentary on our social construct today, the way our world runs, we run on confusion, manipulation, innuendo, and lies. Let's just put it there. That's where we run. That's what happens. That's the way we do things. And we seem compelled to constantly compromise our life just by not telling the truth. I was able to talk to Lance about this lesson before they went on a camp out. And in their marriage class, he says one of those key factors that comes up when they have their marriage class is the main thing Satan uses to destroy a marriage is lies. Just that little bit of trust factor. I'll disturb that a little bit. I'll destroy that just a little bit until if he can just get lies in a relationship, he begins to unravel it. Well, I don't know. He told me. Usually if somebody calls me, well, she told me this and he told me that, and all we want to do is, if we could see the truth of it. There was one time, me and the church down at Joshua, I was preaching there then. We had a girl come to us in a horrible, abusive situation. We went into her house, helped move all of her things out, helped her move to another apartment. And her husband was there while we were moving her out, and we protected her while we moved her out. And 6 months later, we all found out that every word she told us was a lie. And her husband sat there and said nothing. And so the church in our self-righteousness had vindicated all of her actions because of how she was abused. And then we found out every word she told us was a lie. And so you begin to deal with that. You have to be very careful when you begin to take sides and listen to voices and find out the truth. I wish people turned color. No, I'm glad I don't turn colors when I lie. I kind of like the color I am, right? My innuendo goes. Here's your take home this morning. It's a simple take home. Satan is after you. He traps you through deceit and lies. That's his nature. That's what he does. He looks Eve in the eye and says, oh, the day you eat that fruit, you will not be dead. You'll just become like God. God doesn't want you to be like him. Go ahead and eat it. All he did was lie to her. That's all it took. He lied to her. She heard what she wanted to hear, and she acted on that. Well, God says, I'll tell you the truth. If you'll hear the truth and act on what I tell you, I'll protect your life. I'll guard your life. The truth will set you free. This morning, some of you may have something on your heart you need to get off. Maybe not to me, maybe to someone else. Tell them the truth. No, this isn't that lesson where does this dress make me look fat. That's not the sermon, right? This is a different sermon from that, right? But we need to speak the truth with one another. We need to talk to one another. And we need to be sure that we don't let Satan destroy the fabric of our lives by his nature of lying. I pray for you the spiritual discipline of living above lying, without lying this week. That you'll practice that and that you'll reap the benefits of that. We are of our Father God, with whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. We are truth speakers and truth walkers, and we do not give Satan the opportunity to impact our lives. Together we stand and sing.